Football is one hell of an intense sport. You've got players out there going head-to-head, quite literally. So yeah, sometimes it's normal to see them butt heads. But every now and then, things take a wild ride from minor head bumps to a full-blown war zone of hatred. These are NFL stars who absolutely hate each other. Frenzies, we've got to kick things off with two NFL stars that pulled off one of the most intense beefs of the 21st century. Peyton Manning versus Mike Vanderjagt. For the most part of his career, Peyton Manning was the golden boy of the Indianapolis Colts. But apart from just being the golden boy on the field, Manning was pretty savvy when it came to handling the media. He knew how to keep things cool and avoid saying things that would stir up trouble or come back to bite him and all that stuff. Except this one time, in the middle of the 2003 Pro Bowl, when his teammate, Mike Vanderjagt, got on his nerves. Now, Mike was a kicker, and most times, kickers aren't usually in the spotlight. But this guy somehow managed to grab everyone's attention. After a painful playoff loss to the New York Jets in 2002, Vanderjagt decided to not just take a jab at Manning, but also at head coach Tony Dungy. Specifically, he called out Manning for not bringing enough enthusiasm and urgency to the table before the crucial wildcard matchup against the Jets in the 2002 season. Obviously, this pissed Manning off so bad because right before, he played his third Pro Bowl. Almost a year later, he was asked about the entire situation with Mike, and what he said still makes our jaws drop even after 20 long years. He straight up called Mike an idiot, saying,
"Here we are, I'm out of my third Pro Bowl. I'm about to go in and throw a touchdown to Jerry Rice. We're honoring the Hall of Fame. We're talking about our idiot kicker who got liquored up and ran his mouth off."
Ouch! That burn was hotter than a jalapeno pepper. But here's the kicker, pun intended. Vanderjagt was actually a good kicker, but as Peyton put it, he was also an idiot. Even though they both apologized later, probably with a side of awkward silence, you could feel the lingering tension. And even after Vanderjagt left Indianapolis, the hate never really fizzled out. Just like the hate between Geno Smith and Ike Enemkpali. Only this time, the hate was fueled by money. You see, right before the 2015 NFL season kicked off, there was some serious drama between New York Jets teammates Geno Smith and Ike Enemkpali. And well, let's just say it ended with one of them nursing a broken jaw. Here's what really went down. Enemkpali shelled out $600 for Smith's plane ticket to attend training camp. But due to personal stuff, Smith bailed at the last minute. And when Enemkpali asked for his cash back, Smith refused. With that, Enemkpali threw a punch so hard, he broke Smith's jaw. Smith ended up sidelined for a good chunk of time because of that injury, and when he finally returned, he found himself playing second fiddle to Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was having the season of his life, guiding the Jets to a 10-6 record. As for Enemkpali, the Jets gave him the boot the very next day. He had a brief stint with the Buffalo Bills before bouncing around the league, landing on the Oakland Raiders practice squad in 2017. But since then, he's been out of the NFL spotlight. You can say that ugly feud kinda ended his career. Smith, on the other hand, is still in the mix, currently doing his thing with the Seattle Seahawks. But hey, at least they weren't trying to steal each other's job like Joe Montana and Steve Young. Joe Montana's time with the 49ers was epic. Super Bowls, playoff drama, you name it. But after a couple of not-so-great playoff runs and Joe's back surgery, the team brought in Steve Young in 1987 as Joe's replacement. And man, did Young shake things up. He stepped in during a rough playoff loss to the Vikings and showed he was more than just a backup. That's when the whole who's going to be the starting quarterback debate kicked off big time. On one side, you had Joe, determined to prove he still had game. And then there was Young, bringing that fresh energy and mobility. It was like watching two heavyweights slug it out for the top spot, always trying to steal each other's jobs. Tensions were sky high. Joe even talked about it in an interview saying, "If he doesn't hate me as much as I hate him, then something's off." The rivalry lasted until Montana eventually got traded to the Chiefs in 1993. Now, the rivalry between these two was really intense, but it's nothing compared to the next one. Greg Lloyd versus Keenan McCardle. Back in 1997, the Jaguars were riding high until they faced off against the Steelers. The game ended with an overtime heartbreak, and the Steelers snatched first place in the AFC Central Division. But that wasn't even the worst part. After getting hit with a tough loss, their receiver, Keenan McCardle, got an even bigger hit when he got blindsided big time out of nowhere. Steelers linebacker Greg Lloyd came out swinging with full force, accusing McCardle of making a threatening phone call to his Pittsburgh home the week before. And get this, it happened right off the bat, on the very first play from scrimmage. McCardle swore that he didn't make any call, but he had a sneaky feeling someone from the Steelers camp might have pulled the stunt to light a fire under Lloyd's butt. Even though Lloyd got hit with a hefty $15,000 fine for his behavior, the bad blood between them didn't just vanish. Nope, from that moment on, it was pure hate between McCardle and Lloyd. And in another one of those let's settle this with our fist moments, these next two really took their beef to a whole new level. Michael Westbrook and Stephen Davis. For those of us who can recall the good old days, the training camp brawl between former Washington Redskins player Michael Westbrook and Stephen Davis is one of those hate stories we'll never forget. At least, not anytime soon. And it wasn't just the theatrics that had us glued. It was the raw display of pure hatred between them. Westbrook went all out and attacked his own teammate Davis right there on the practice field. Punches were flying, and Davis ended up face down bleeding. Coach Norv Turner wasted no time in booting Westbrook off the field, and he even called off the TV crews from taping the whole scene. Westbrook dashed off to the locker room, leaving Davis on the ground nursing his wounds. Neither of them had pads or helmets on, so Davis took those punches straight to the face. Ouch! For his moment of madness, Westbrook got hit with a hefty $50,000 fine and had to do the whole apology tour. And let's be real, those punches were probably the hardest hits Davis took during the entire 1997 season. And speaking of hits, Steve Smith and Ken Lucas definitely exchanged more than a few heavy blows back in 2008. Steve Smith and Ken Lucas. Now, hate might sound a bit intense, but when Steve Smith and Ken Lucas got into a full-blown brawl, it's hard to find a better word to describe it. Before the brawl, Steve and Ken had been trading trash talk, arguing, and just generally disliking each other for about 3 years. So, you could say tensions were already running pretty high. But on that fateful day, things took a turn for the worse. The argument spiraled out of control, and it all ended with Smith throwing a sucker punch in training camp. Talk about a messy situation. The team tried to keep a lid on the whole thing for years, handling the mess behind closed doors. But let's be real, you can't hide the hate that moment birthed. NFL fans might know Steve Smith as a bit of a firecracker, but hearing that he threw punches at a teammate? That's a whole other level. After the dust settled, Steve was sent packing from training camp and slapped with a 2-game suspension for his outburst. Meanwhile, poor Ken was left nursing his left eye with an ice pack before getting carted off to the locker room. Damn! That's almost as intense as the hate between Terrell Owens and Donovan McNabb. Without a doubt, Terrell Owens was one of the best and most controversial wide receivers of his time. And boy, did that show when he got into it with his quarterback at the time, Donovan McNabb. Back when they were both rocking the Philadelphia Eagles jerseys, Owens dropped a bomb during an interview with Michael Irvin on ESPN. He straight up said he'd rather have Brett Favre slinging passes his way than McNabb. Now, McNabb didn't take those comments lightly. He admitted he felt personally attacked and even saw it as a black-on-black crime, feeling like Owens preferred a white quarterback over him. After that blow-up, things went downhill fast. T.O. got the boot to the Dallas Cowboys about a year later after the 2005 season, and the Eagles bid farewell to McNabb after 2009. McNabb went on to bounce around a bit, doing stints with Washington and Minnesota before calling it quits in 2013. Now, let's talk about the beef between Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin. Offensive lineman Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin had a huge falling out during their time with the Miami Dolphins. Word got out that Incognito, along with his buddies Mike Pouncey and John Jerry, were constantly giving Martin a hard time, which eventually pushed him to leave the team. It all started back in 2012, Martin's rookie year, when things in the locker room got real toxic real quick. They were throwing around insults like cunt, bitch, pussy, and fat, just like it was no big deal. But it didn't stop there. Incognito took things to a whole new low by making some seriously nasty comments about Martin's sister in a text message. Let's just say it was beyond inappropriate. With all that harassment going on, it's no wonder Martin couldn't stand incognito. I mean, giving someone a hard time is one thing, but dragging their family into it? That's just crossing a line that should never be crossed. And you know what else is crossing the line? Throwing fists right in the middle of a game, like these next guys, Jay Cutler and Jamarcus Webb. The whole mess started because Cutler had a reputation for being a bit of a crybaby at times. As for Webb, he just couldn't stand it. And if there's one thing you can count on when it comes to hate, it's that the longer it builds up, the more intense it is. So that fateful moment when Cutler decided to confront Webb on live TV, let's just say losing it is putting it lightly. If you watch the tape, it's clear Cutler was beyond furious. And as if that wasn't bad enough, he even ended up shoving Webb in another fit of rage. Now that was epic! But if we're being real, no amount of hate on this list can be compared to the hate between Bill Romanowski and Dexter Carter. And what's even more insane is that it all happened over a microwave. According to Romanowski, the San Francisco facility had this old microwave that worked decently well, until you tried to warm up more than one sandwich at a time. It was a total hassle, taking like 10 minutes just to heat them both up together. But here's where things got spicy. Carter decided to throw his sandwich in with Romanowski's anyway. Romanowski told him to take it out, but Carter didn't budge. So Romanowski took matters into his own hands and yanked Carter's sandwich out himself. That's when things really started to heat up. They went back and forth for a few minutes until Romanowski had had enough. He straight up chucked the microwave at Carter, then grabbed him by the neck and slammed him up against the vending machine. Now, that's more than enough reason to hate someone, right? Let us know what you think in the comments.